Okay, welcome everyone. This is a session of Room.net Conference 2022. This is a session of Gerald Versluis, sorry Gerald. .NET MAUI Blazor build hybrid mobile, desktop, and web apps. Gerald, you can open your mic and share your desktop, please.
I need to share it again. All right, no worries.
Yes, sorry.
No problem. Yeah.
When you are ready, you can start.
There we are.
Okay. Have a nice session, Gerald.
Thank you so much. All right, so I think I'm supposed to say buongiorno, right? That's kind of like, it's probably not pronounced right,
Buongiorno.
But buongiorno.
And ciao a tutti.
Grazie mille, something like that. I know a few words.
Yes.
All right, so I'm going to talk about for the next 40 minutes, I think. Can I get this little thing out of the way?
Yes, for 40 minutes, and at the end of the session, there is a Q&A. So all the attendees can ask the question. You can share your question on the live chat, and then Gerald will answer the question at the end of the session. Okay?
Yeah. All right, that's perfect. So I'm going to talk about .NET MAUI Blazor, which is what I'm here for, so that's perfect. And who am I? So I'm not going to tell you my whole resume. My name is Gerald Versluis, but you did a fine job with Versluis. That's not too bad. I work at Microsoft, and I work on the actual .NET MAUI team, so I should know what I'm talking about a little bit, hopefully. If you have any questions, I prefer if you ask them like openly on my Twitter account, or I don't know, somewhere else where you can find me, because, you know, if you do it publicly, then you don't have to wait for me to answer. Maybe other people can come in who know more about this stuff as well. If you have something that you cannot share publicly, or don't feel comfortable with that, there's my email address as well, so feel free to send me an email. I'm not always great at responding very soon, but at least you can try. With all the stuff that I'm developing and also talking about, I also do something on YouTube. So you can find the link down there if you want to subscribe to that and be updated with .NET MAUI and some Xamarin and Blazor and all the things related. Then you can go there and have a look at that as well. I'm working remotely from the Netherlands, so I'm a little bit close by to Italy. I'm not sure if there's people from other places joining as well. Of course, you're very welcome here as well. But yeah. So on the agenda today, I think it's pretty straightforward, because we have a couple of ingredients, right? We have what is .NET MAUI, because it's .NET MAUI Blazor, right? What is Blazor then, for the people who don't know that? And then what is .NET MAUI Blazor, right? So there's a couple of things that are coming together here. I will quickly go over to .NET MAUI a little bit first, then a little bit Blazor, and then how we're putting it together. So you will see a couple of demos, hopefully mostly demos, but there's a couple of things that are really good to know. So let's talk about that first. So what is .NET MAUI? Well, it's the evolution of Xamarin Forms. This is kind of interesting, right? Xamarin Forms has been a product for the past 8 years or so, but now it's suddenly .NET MAUI, and it's a UI framework from Microsoft, which is new to a lot of people. So this always takes some explaining depending on what type of audience you are. So let me quickly go through that. Xamarin Forms has been our offering for building cross-platform apps based on C# and .NET for iOS, Android, and UWP primarily. But we also had platforms like Tizen, Linux, WPF, macOS. They were like unofficially kind of supported, but you can build apps on C# and .NET for all of these platforms. Now, I don't know if this story is true or not, but I like to believe it is. So Xamarin Forms, it's kind of like a boring name, right? And if we look at this graphic from the official website back then, you can see, like, even if you don't read the text, it says like, you can see Xamarin Forms is best for, and then you see kind of like these boring applications, right? So these boring data entry things and a button, and that was it. And then if you look at Xamarin iOS and Xamarin Android, those are best for media players and games and showing maps. So, you know, we always kind of had this image stuck to us that we were kind of like boring, right, with Xamarin Forms. But you know, a lot of people made a lot more. People are now making games with Xamarin Forms, and you can use maps for sure, and you can do all the things. But you know, I think the Xamarin Forms kind of like was architected to only do kind of like the data entry stuff. But people expected more. People started to do more. But we tried to keep it backwards compatible, right? Because of that, we couldn't make big changes, but now with .NET MAUI, we can. So with all the experience in mind from the past 8 years Xamarin Forms, we're now building .NET MAUI, and it will be the best place to also build media players and games and do things with maps and all the crazy things that you can come up with. So what is .NET MAUI then? It's multi-platform app UI. That's what it stands for. That's where the name comes from. And conveniently, we've made the P kind of like lowercase because .NET MAUI is just a little bit of a weird name, right? So now this is our new product, and kind of like the same as Xamarin Forms. This is to build cross-platform apps based on C# and .NET, but now for iOS, Android, Windows, and macOS. So you can see macOS is now a primary target, and UWP has changed to Windows because UWP is not being supported anymore. Now it's all WinUI, and it doesn't really matter, right? So we're just offering you the bits to work on Windows, and what's beneath that doesn't really matter. So if we pour that into a one sentence, then it's .NET MAUI is the most productive way to develop native apps that perform great on any device that runs Android, iOS, macOS, or Windows from a single code base, which is really, really amazing. So if we look a little bit under the hood really quickly, these are kind of like the things that you care about, right? You want to write that app code because that's your idea, that's your $1 million idea that's going to make you rich. And then you have these platforms that you want to run it on, right? Android, iOS, macOS, and Windows. So but between that, how are we going to get like from there to on the platform? So it starts with like we first have Android, iOS, macOS, and Windows, all the SDKs. So for Android, you have to write Java. For iOS and macOS, you have to write Objective-C or Swift. And for Windows, we can already leverage like C# and .NET, right? So that's cool. But now there's a big gap between your app code where you want to write all your apps and all the SDKs, right? So what is in between there? We first have the .NET runtime, which, you know, executes all the .NET code. On top of that, we have the .NET base class library, which holds all the functionality, right? So that's basically what you're programming against, and we do all the hard stuff to translate that to how it should work on Android, iOS, macOS, etc. Then on top of that, we've added .NET for Android, .NET for iOS, and WinUI. So if you've been working with Xamarin before, this was previously called Xamarin.Android, Xamarin.iOS, but now we've renamed that as well because Xamarin as a name is going away, and this is what you're using. And on top of that, we're building .NET MAUI, basically. So we have to go through all these layers, and kind of like with cloud services, if you want to at any point kind of like take a shortcut and not use .NET MAUI, you totally can. You can go into .NET for Android, build your apps there, but then you have to do more platform stuff yourself, right? So what's really powerful about this is if you use .NET MAUI, you don't have to worry about all the platform specific stuff. So with this, we can basically smash it all down, and you have to worry about your app code only, and you have to know how to make use of .NET MAUI, right? But that's very easy, so don't worry about that. We already have a rich library of controls. We have 40 plus controls. We have navigation that comes out of the box, different types, adaptive layouts, because now we don't just run on mobile devices, but we also run on desktop devices, right? So an adaptive layout is very important. So we have things for that as well. Right to left support, accessibility, of course, always very important. So we have better support for that as well. Now, I included this slide. This is a lot about like how regular .NET MAUI works, right? But I included this slide because it's going to be interesting to see the difference between how you build with .NET MAUI and how you're going to build with Blazor, right? So that's why I'm showing you this. And of course, there's also a lot of similarity. So it's an interesting synergy going on here. So here at the top, you can see MVVM. No, sorry, I'm seeing MVVM here. You can see XAML, which is like the design language that we've had at Microsoft for a long time, right? We had it in UWP, we had it in WPF, and now we also have it in .NET MAUI. So this is how you structure your UI. And then behind that, you can use everything that you know about MVVM. It's very optimized for that, and you can just write C# code. So That's pretty cool. You can leverage all that knowledge that you might already have, and also you can transport that to Blazor, as we'll see in a little bit. Now, writing C# code is, or you can also do the UI in C# code, because everything you can do in XAML, you can also do in C# code, but it's not really a great experience. So in the Xamarin Community Toolkit and also in the .NET MAUI Community Toolkit, which is a plugin that you can install, we have a more fluent syntax for C#, which makes it easier to write your UI in C# code as well. Or if you want to do things completely different, you can also look at Comet, which does not implement MVVM, but is more optimized for MVU styles applications, which is popularized by Flutter or Swift UI or that kind of stuff. So you can use that as well. We have a lot of styling options for regular .NET MAUI, which doesn't really apply if you are looking at Blazor apps. So I'm just going to quickly skip over this one. We also made, like I already mentioned, it's going to be from a single code base. And we did, if you're coming from Xamarin Forms, we did a lot of improvements there. So before a Xamarin Forms application would look like this, you would have the solution. The top project would then be the shared project where your XAML would live and all your shared code. That's where you want to write your code. And then you would have Android, iOS, UWP. For all the targets, you would have a separate project. Now, while that was great, it made it really clear on where to write your platform-specific code, and even more so, you have to include all the resources for like Android and iOS. But now you had to do it duplicately, right? So you had to do it in Android, do all kinds of sizes and stuff, and then do the same thing for iOS. Now we've unified that, and we just have this single project that allows you to run all your code from just one project. So we now have these platforms folder in here for Android, iOS, Windows. So you can still do all the platform-specific code there, but that also means that the resources are now shared as well. So you just put in your image, preferably in SVG, because that scales automatically, right? You will put your SVG in there, and we will scale it automatically to all the resolutions that we need for iOS or Android or Windows or whatever, right? So that is really cool. The same works for splash screen. You just need to design it once now, and it will work for all the platforms. You can share your resources. I already mentioned that. And how you select the target to run on, then you just select from the run menu, like I want to run it on my iPhone, I want to run it on my Android device or Windows. We will see that in the demo in a little bit. And beyond that, we also have something that's called Essentials. Now, most recently, actually, preview 14 of .NET MAUI has just been released. And in the blog post, David Ortnow, a program manager, discovered that a lot of people, like I already said, a lot of new people are coming in, and they might not know about Essentials, right? So they're asking, like, how can I check if my device is connected to the internet? Or how can I use the GPS or location services? Or how can I do all these things? That is something that is in Essentials, but we know that. I know that, at least coming from Xamarin, but a lot of new people looking at this might not know it. So if you want to use all these sensors, all the APIs, there's a lot in here. Then there's Essentials for you to look at. That's built into .NET 6 now immediately as well. And we have Blazor Hybrid, so that's bonus, but that's the thing that we're talking about here. So I'm gonna quickly skip over this one and just go to the next. Now, usually I would show a demo here, but the time is a little bit shorter than the usual sessions I do. So let me just quickly skip over that one, and we'll just put all the demos together after I wrap up the slide. So then what is Blazor? That's kind of like the next ingredient, right? And that's basically web development without JavaScript. That's always kind of like the fun thing that I try to put in here, but it's much more than that. So historically, if you thought about like single page applications, web applications with all kinds of rich controls, dialogues, menus, grids, all the things, which is also kind of like adaptive, right? So you could run it in the browser, and then automatically, if you use Bootstrap and that kind of stuff, it would also look great on your mobile device. But you would also think automatically of JavaScript, right? So Angular, React, Vue, and those are all based on JavaScript. So if you're a C# and .NET developer, then you're suddenly pulled out of your language. It doesn't matter that it's JavaScript. You can love it, you can hate it, but JavaScript is there and it's here to stay, right? But if you have to switch languages, if you have to switch context, it's just not very productive. So with that in mind, we came up with Blazor. with which you can do those single page applications. Still leverage JavaScript if that's what you want, but you can now write this in C# in the IDE that you already know and love, with the IntelliSense, with all the predictions, the AI predictions that we have now. So now you have this consistent ecosystem. It's very stable because it's been around now for Visual Studio turns 25, I think, in a few days or something like that. So it's been around for a long time, and now we can use this in the browser as well, which is really cool. So where does it kind of like fit in? So we have on the web UI part, we already have MVC, Razor pages, single page applications. And on the services side, we have HTTP, so kind of like the web API thing, Signal R, and all the other stuff that you can see here. And Blazor fits in like the web UI part, right? It's a single page application framework, which also uses Razor pages and all kinds of Signal R can be used as well. So it uses all these things, and it's kind of like, this was the right time to introduce Blazor. How it works, we kind of have two different variations of how Blazor works typically, and I'm going to show you a third one in a little bit. That's what this presentation is about. But you can use it as Blazor server, so that doesn't change that much to traditional applications. Basically, you can run your ASP.NET Core because Blazor is built on top of ASP.NET Core, make no mistake, and you can run that on a server in the cloud or on your own server if that's what you still want. And then inside of the browser, whenever you go to that page, there's a Signal R connection that will each time say like, hey, this changed a little bit, and you need to render that in the domain object model in your browser, right? So there's overhead on the communication there, but this is something that you can use, and pay special attention to what's inside of that Blazor box here. It says Razor components and .NET, because that's something that you can definitely reuse across all the things. So Blazor WebAssembly is kind of like the really interesting thing here, right? This mimics JavaScript the most. So this runs on the client in the browser, and there's no server component unless you need to get data from kind of like a REST API. And you can see that same Blazor box with the same Razor components and the same .NET, but now we just added WebAssembly. And WebAssembly is kind of like the technique where we can run our .NET code on it. So it's a special intermediate language. We compiled .NET to understand that, and now we can suddenly run C# in the browser. You can also do, I think, other languages, Rust or C++ or some other things. And now suddenly it's all running inside of the browser. So here is a little bit of overhead because you need to download the .NET runtime that comes together with it, right? But with .NET 6, we trimmed that down to like 1 megabyte, I think. So, it's not that much. It's like a big image that you would put on your website anyway. But yeah, so there's trade-offs here, right? And that's kind of like what you will see with whenever you have options. So when to choose what, I'm not going to read them all to you. You can read it for yourself, but I'm going to focus on like the lower two parts. So if you choose Blazor server, it requires a persistent internet connection, right? Or network connection at least. Because it keeps going back and forth between the server and your browser. And there's a higher UI latency because it has to, you click somewhere, then it's going to send to the server, hey, this thing was clicked, what do I do now? And then the server is going to say like, hey, okay, I need to render this other thing. So there's a little bit of latency there. But for WebAssembly, which runs on the client, there's a larger download size initially. And therefore, there's a slower runtime performance as well. So it's all trade-offs, and depending on your scenario, you have to choose the right one. But there's now a third option, which is the hybrid one. So that's the one that we're really interested in, right? That can run on the machine, on your device, on your mobile device. It can basically run anywhere. Now, I again have a little demo slide here. Maybe I should pop quickly into Visual Studio and do a little demo of regular Blazor, because that can be very interesting with what's going on here. I think I didn't prepare this, did I? I did not, so I need to quickly open a new window here, but that's no problem. So let me just quickly create a file new Blazor application. Maybe you already did that and you can dream it, but let me just quickly do that. If I can reach it here. So my Visual Studio might look a little bit like zoomed in. That's so you can see it better on your computer. So things are a little bit out of the layout here, but I promise you it will be for the better so that you can read actually what's on my screen. So here we can create this Blazor server app, right? And we can also scroll in here. We have the Blazor WebAssembly app. So it should be somewhere in here, but I'm just going to stick with the server one. There's like minor differences, but you can easily switch between the server and the client if you change your mind later on. Or, if you maybe want to do it even better, and we'll get to that, you are going to place all the Blazor things in components, and you can reuse those components over all your projects. So we have to configure a couple of things here. It's all fine. Just create the thing, and we'll see this template that we will also see in our .NET MAUI Blazor application in a little bit. So here we'll see like all kinds of familiar things, right? And we get a little information on how to build this with the documentation, connect to the cloud and deploy it, which is fine. I'm going to skip that for now. And here, if we look at kind of like the project structure, you can see things that are familiar for like your C# code, right? If you were coming from other parts of the .NET ecosystem. So yeah, we can just see regular C# code, but we also see this www root with suddenly some web things, right? CSS and that kind of stuff. Because this is the Blazor server one, you don't see an index HTML. If you do the WASM one, I think you will have an index.html, which kind of bootstraps the whole thing. And if we run this, which is like what I wanted to show you, you will get like a very little single page application that does a couple of things to show you a couple of concepts that you can do. So a browser should come up here, and what we should see is like a little thing, which is actually a component that asks us to fill in a survey. So that's always interesting. Oh, it pops up on my other screen here. So it's over here. And so here we are. So let me zoom this in a little bit. So this is a little survey thing, which is an actual survey. So if you're using this and liking it, then actually fill this in. And this is actually a component that's reusable. So you could abstract this into a separate DLL and use that over other projects as well. We have this little counter just to show how the events work. So this works, right? And we have a fetch data, which kind of mimics fetching data from a third party and gets that data here in a nice layout. And because we use web and bootstrap and that kind of things is built in, it's also very responsive out of the box, right? So if I resize this down, then you can see that the menu goes here and this works all fine. So that's all stuff that we get for free from like the web world, where they have years and years in experience with doing all of this. So thank you, web guys, for doing this. We are very thankful. So with this, like if we look at like the pages, we have this index.razor, which is like Razor is the, well, maybe you can compare it to PHP, if you will. You can kind of mix like your HTML tags, and this is like the component. So this is the survey component, and you can also write code in here. So you can just do add code, and you can write your code block here. I can just do var foo is, and then it's a string, right? So I can suddenly mix my C# code in here. So we can do all that. And now the interesting thing is like this survey component. So if we look at like, is that in shared? Here we are. Yeah, that's the survey prompt. So you can see this is kind of like the syntax highlighting is a little bit different, right? So this is not really HTML. This is like Blazor syntax then. So this is actually a C# thing, and you can see that survey prompt here. So this is just HTML, but you can also have this parameter. So if we look at this title here, we can specify that here, right? So this is the way we can specify kind of like outside parameters that we got going on here. And suddenly we have this reusable component. So that is very interesting. We could lift this up from this project. It's now in a single project, but we could put this in a Razor class library, which is a DLL specifically for Blazor. We can put it in there, and suddenly we have something reusable that we could put on NuGet if we want to, and then you can use it on different projects as well. That's something that we want to keep in mind, because we're going to see that in a little bit as well. Let me close this one and close this Visual Studio, go back to a couple more slides before I show you the really interesting stuff. We got that, and then what is .NET MAUI plus Blazor? It's basically the best of both worlds. Oh, and I have this little animation I'm very proud of, so we'll just watch that one. Okay, there we are. So with .NET MAUI Blazor, you can build cross-platform native apps that run on Windows, macOS, iOS, and Android. And you can use your existing Razor class libraries. That's the thing that I just mentioned. So maybe you have a Blazor application already, and you have things in Razor class libraries, or at least stuff that you can easily put into Razor class libraries. And now you can easily use that in your .NET MAUI app as well. Now, you might want to think like, hey, why can't I just take my whole .NET MAUI Blazor application and put it in a mobile app? Technically, I think you can come up with ways to actually do that. Realistically, I think it's more about reusing those Razor class libraries and plugging in functionality that way. But yeah, up to you how you want to figure that out. Because there's still a lot of specific things about your mobile app probably, right? Which you can totally fix from a single code base if that's what you really want. But I think it makes more sense to do it with these different components. And that's the thing that I'm talking about here. You will have full platform device access. So that's what's really cool. You can still access the camera because that's kind of like the big advantage mobile devices still have, right? You have this GPS built-in, you have a camera, you have all the other kinds of things that you want to use. And you can have all that access with .NET MAUI, but you can still leverage all your knowledge and all the advantages from your web background, maybe. So those worlds really can come together and you can leverage the best of both. What exactly is it then? Blazor Hybrid is an extension of Blazor. It's basically the third option to go with Blazor Server and Blazor WebAssembly, so that graphic that we just saw. It's built on .NET 6 and .NET MAUI, and it's implemented through a Blazor Web View control to host and render your Blazor Web UI. Now, again, this is kind of like really interesting because the Blazor Web View is not just implemented for .NET MAUI. It's also implemented for WinForms. WinForms is totally back. It's also implemented for WPF. So if you have a existing Blazor application again, and you have a legacy WinForms application, which happens, right, or a legacy WPF application, you can start modernizing that by plugging in those Blazor components in there now by the use of a Blazor Web View, because a Blazor Web View is just another layout element. You can use that layout element inside of your legacy application and suddenly, boom, you can have all this new power of .NET 6 and .NET whatever, and all the new shiny stuff from within your legacy application, and you have a clear transition path to move your legacy code to something newer. So how does that work? I mentioned XAML already. So this is just, like I said, a Blazor Web View is just another control inside of .NET MAUI or WinForms or WPF. You have to specify a couple of things like the host page. Where do we want to bootstrap? So the component type is what you see there. And that kind of like bootstraps you into the Blazor world. And there we suddenly see main.razor, which is like the entry point of your Blazor application. And there we bootstrap a couple of things to get you started there. If you're going to have a closer look at Blazor, then you will get an understanding of what this all means, but basically this will scan all your Razor pages for a little route tag that determines like how to navigate to there, and it will define a default layout. So that's kind of what's going on here. I'll show you that in Visual Studio in a little bit. Now the Mythbusters. Now this is also something that's very important because Blazor Hybrid runs 100% natively in one process. So it's not like we're faking it, right? It's not like we have a server process that you just saw on my computer running on your device. It's just because we're already in .NET, right? We're already in the .NET ecosystem. We don't need the WebAssembly here. We don't need all that stuff. We can just run on .NET directly. So there's no HTTP request going back and forth, no network required if that's what you want. Of course, again, if you want to get the REST API calls out, that's HTTP request, but just for running your application, there's no network, no HTTP required, and you have no browser sandbox, so where you're bound to local storage in your browser and not being able to access the disk or that kind of stuff. You don't have any of that. You can just write an application that formats your hard drive if that's what you want. You have no browser sandbox with this. What you do have, if you're going to run this on a mobile device, you're going to have to deal with all the permissions there. So if you want to access the camera, you've opened an app, right? And it's going to say like, hey, can I use your camera? That's stuff that you need to implement now if you want to actually do that. So only kind of like the only thing that's rendered is in a web view control is the HTML UI, which is great because now you can get that identical look and feel on different devices. And like I said, if you're using Bootstrap or a framework like that, it will get responsive automatically. So that is really great. So let's finally do a little demo of that. And I got a couple. So this is just a file new .NET MAUI application. And this is not started in the presentation mode, so that's too bad. I hope it's readable. I don't know how to, I switched to a different machine just now before starting this presentation because I had a couple of, so I don't really know how to zoom with this because normally I do that differently. Oh, here we are. So if we look at the solution explorer right here, then you can see it looks very familiar with like the Blazor application as well, right? Because we see the pages, we see the data. So we have these pages right here, the Razor pages, and we have the www again with CSS, and now we do have the index.html. But we also have the platforms and the resources that I mentioned from .NET MAUI. So basically what they did is they took the templates from .NET MAUI, the templates from Blazor, they put it together, and boom, now we have a .NET MAUI Blazor app. How do I zoom back out? Here we are. So that's kind of what they did. And you can even see the kind of like the survey prompt here, right? So that's also something that looks identical. And it's like literally taken from the Blazor components. So if we open the survey prompt, you will see the exact same code that we got here. But right now, what I can do is here in this run menu, you can see iOS, you can see Android emulators, you can do Windows. Let's do Windows just for the fun of it. And we can run this on Windows and it will look, you know, mostly the same because it will look kind of like a browser window on Windows, right? So it will kind of like look exactly the same. But the fun thing that we can actually do is switch that around, and then suddenly I can run it on Android as well. While this is loading, actually, let's just open it up on Android, which has become very much smaller as well than I remembered. So let me make that a little bit bigger. And then, which one is the right one? I can't see with these names. I think it's this one. Now we can have this .NET MAUI Blazor app, and I can run the exact same thing. I just deployed it a little bit earlier, just before this session. And you can see that we will end up with the exact same application. Here we are, but now it's like responsive, right? And we see the menu here on the top. We can see the title change to MAUI app 33, but we have the exact same things. We have a counter, and we have here the fetch data. So all of that stuff now running on this platform directly on .NET, no overhead there, and we can just do it like this. Maybe if I do this, I think I need to, if I change the orientation, does that work with the, oh, here you can see. So see, you can get this like adaptive thing here as well. And now suddenly you have the menu here kind of like dedicated, right? So that's like your Bootstrap in action right here. And here at the same time, in the background, we also ran this thing on Windows. So this is a Windows app that you can publish to the store if that's what you want. So, you know, running from the exact same code base. And also here, if you make this smaller, then this will be adaptive as well, right? Because this is just all the web stuff in action here. And that's what makes this really, really cool. Now, let me go over to a little bit more complex demo where I'm going to walk you through. Which is a little sample app that I'm working on. I'm going to put this in a course and put it on my YouTube channel. So if that's something that you're interested in, be on the lookout for that. And actually, let me just run it directly so we don't have to wait on that later. There we are. And here you can see I added some more things, right? And what's really interesting, I did not have to write any platform specific code, I think. So we still need to bootstrap our apps, right? So we still need these platforms folder and the Android manifest.xml. And for iOS, we have the info plist that kind of holds the metadata for your applications, because Apple and Google are not going to say like, hey, yeah, sure, just send us that exe file and we'll convert that into something that runs on our mobile devices, right? They're not going to do that. So at the end of the day, we still have to come up with binaries that the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store will understand. So that's why we still need that metadata, but we're just making it easier for you to work with. Now, another thing I skipped over is this MAUI program, which is kind of like your generic host builder that you might know from ASP.NET Core, that you might know from your Blazor application. So this is, again, something that we're adopting inside of .NET MAUI to make it easier for you to become a cross-platform developer, basically. If you already know this stuff, then that will lower the threshold for you to begin with, because there is still enough cross-platform stuff to deal with that you have to learn and look into. So don't worry about that. You will have a great time doing that. But at least you know this, right? You know how to work with this. The dependency injection here just works. So I can just say, hey, a dialog service, which is an interesting case. I can just register that and I can just use that now as well. Or I have a picture service and I get something from my weather. The localization, so this is an existing package, Microsoft.extensions.localization. You can just plug that in here and it works just the same as it would do on a regular Blazor application. So that's what's really nice. Now I think this is still building. Yeah, it's still building. So the dialog one is actually very interesting, because if you're working with Blazor, you don't have JavaScript, so you can't just say, hey, new dialog or alert. I think it's the alert, right? New alert, do the thing, and it will pop that browser alert. That's not something that you can do. So you would have two options: go to JavaScript interoperability, which you totally can, and then still go through JavaScript to show a dialog, or you can do it with like a Bootstrap dialog, where you pop a HTML dialog, which is, I don't think, always that great. But if you're running on .NET MAUI, we have all the power to reach out to the platform, right, that we're running on, whether that's on desktop or mobile. So what I could do, because .NET MAUI, of course, is a very complete framework, and we have the option to get some dialogue there. So if we go look into my services and my dialog service, I can see that I can just do application current main page, because there's always the main page, right? Even if it has only a single Blazor web view. And I can say display action sheet, which is actually another thing. But I can also do display alert, and I just pass down the parameters basically, and I register that as a dependency injection thing. And suddenly I can show dialogues that look and feel as they are supposed to be on that platform. So let me see if I actually got the same application still deployed here on Windows. So you can see kind of like the difference, and it's deployed on Android now here. Now, this application, the demo is, I didn't want to do another to-do app. So what this is doing, I can add my teammates here, because we are working remotely, all of us, and I can see what their current weather is over there, their local time. So I can see all these things. I can add a little picture. If I miss them, I can look at them. So just we have a couple of things to chit chat about, right? I can keep my eye on what's going on there locally. So it has all the things. It has a local database. You can use that as well. It accesses a REST API to get the weather data, all these things. But if I click here, like the delete, if I want to delete someone, it pops this dialog. It says, hey, do you want to delete this one? And this is a platform dialog on Android. If I do the same thing here, I actually have to add one first. So let's do Gerald from, I'm not in Amsterdam, but let's do Amsterdam, Netherlands, submit, and I should pop up here. And if I do the same thing here, I want to delete it. Then for some reason, oh, here we are. So we get this dialog, but now how it's supposed to look on Windows, right? So this will feel like it's an actual platform application, and it should look and feel the way it's here. So you can really leverage the best of both worlds. Now, this is kind of like, you know, okay, that's nice, but where is the real power? Well, the real power, if you ask me, is if we do the add one again, and we say Gerald, and I can say Amsterdam, doesn't really matter. But we can also add a picture. So typically, if you would do something with files in a web environment, you would have to do the upload thing, right? But here you can actually access like the gallery. So on Windows, you can just say, or you can take a picture. That's even cooler, right? You can access the camera, or you can say pick from gallery. And I can pick here from the picture. So these are actually all my team members. Love you. So, you know, I can just pick something from the file system here. And if we do the same thing here on Android, I can also do add, and I can do Gerald. Actually, I don't need to actually fill this in, so I'm not sure why I'm doing that. I can say add picture, and I can now say, again, pick from gallery, take from pick from gallery, or take picture. And when I do picture, I get the emulated camera from Android, so it's not going to really look nice here. But I'm going to actually access the camera app here. I can take this picture of whatever this thing is in pixel art that's going on here. So I did that. I can accept it if my computer lets me. I hope you can still hear me. I'm still here because everything froze right now. Well, you can select this picture, and you can use that inside of your application as well. So that's where the power really comes through, that you can use those device sensors as well. Trying to get things back to work here. Again, I'm not. If you can still hear me. Luca, if you can maybe confirm that you can at least still hear me, then I can keep talking. Okay, no. I'm just going to shut this down. I'm sure you'll believe me. All right, so let's go back to PowerPoint for a little bit. so I can wrap up the story. So that's the demo, and you're probably now like, yes, this is awesome, this is amazing, I want to get started. Well, you totally can, because all of this is out now. With Visual Studio 2022, you do need to have the preview version. So I think at the time that is 17.2 preview 2. It has been released a couple of days ago. But there's a couple of other things that you need to know. So I get a lot of questions like, when should I use .NET MAUI Blazor, or should I use .NET MAUI Blazor? When should I use regular .NET MAUI, or when should I use Blazor? And the answer to all of this is basically yes, just use all of it. So it kind of depends, right? Maybe you're a web developer and you're looking to get into cross-platform. You want to have that presence in the App Store with an actual app. You can do that now. You can leverage all your web developer skills and create a beautiful cross-platform app. Or you have an existing Blazor application and you want to go to devices or cross-platform. Maybe you have that legacy application that I already talked about, or maybe just because you can and it's cool new technology. But it also works the other way around, right? Maybe you have a cross-platform app and you want to also branch out to the web and do a web application that accompanies your mobile application. So that's all things that you can do for now. You can really mix and match these technologies as well. So just use whatever makes sense to you, whatever you feel comfortable with. You can totally do that. Now, another way to do things is the Blazor mobile bindings, which doesn't render to an HTML UI, but really renders to a native UI, so the platform UI. That's basically at the core of .NET MAUI. Whenever you specify a button in XAML, it will translate to whatever a button should look like on Android or iOS. And the Blazor mobile bindings allow you to write in that Blazor syntax that we've just seen, but now it will translate to the actual native control. So that's really cool as well. It's still experimental at this time, but if it's something you're interested in, go have a look. All the resources, we'll probably share the slides afterwards. So this is a lot of resources on the stuff that I just talked about. If you want to know something, just tweet at me, send me an email or whatever. Thank you so much for joining. I hope it was a little bit chaotic with the technical issues just here, but I hope you still learned and enjoyed something from it. So thank you so much. I hope there's still a couple of questions that need answering.
Gerald, at the moment there are no questions.
No
I
questions.
asked in the chat, so we can still wait some time, but
sure. Well, the people watching, feel free. How much time do I still have, Luca?
How much time? You have 5 minutes if you.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, let me just go back to while if you have questions, please just type them in the chat, but just do not here silently sit waiting for that. Let me just go back to a little bit of code and maybe spend these 5 minutes showing off some more cool stuff. So maybe this hopefully got a little bit more responsive while I was talking. Nope, not really. Oh, so I can accept this image hopefully now. There we are. So this component, actually, this is an uploading image now. It says it's uploading it to Google Blob Storage, actually. No, not Google Blob Storage, Microsoft Azure Blob Storage, of course. And we get this URL back, right? So we're showing that this is now the image that has been uploaded. So everything is fine. I'm going to submit. And we should see here at the end that we now got a new entry with this picture that I just took, right? So this is still Blazor, this is still all the things, but now we can leverage the camera. We can see all this stuff here pop up automatically, and that's really how you can bridge these two worlds together, and that makes it really, really powerful. Now, I already mentioned that all of this, what you're seeing here, is also like a local database. So I just have this, I implemented it actually with SQLite and also LightDB, so you can choose whatever you want. And that is again, we're going outside of our browser sandbox, right? So we can just put that database file somewhere on the file system, and we can just use it. And again, that works cross-platform because I can do it here as well. If I submit this again, then now it's here, and then I can close this. And whenever I open it again, it should be right there. So let me see if I can do that. Here we are, and if I open it again, it should be still here because it just loads up my local database again, and it loads all the data from there. So that's pretty amazing. Now, if you also want to do hey, there's still a lot of good things about the JavaScript, right? So if you want to do maybe Google Maps, that's something that you can totally do as well. So I wanted to add all the Well, this actually crashes here. I knew that. So maybe I should do it here on Android. So I have all these people added. They have a little location. That's why I put that in here. And now I can suddenly see where everyone is, right? Maybe I want to see them all on a map. So this really uses like Google Maps, JavaScript things, adds these little pins right here, and suddenly I can see where all these people are, and I can go around here. So this is just because it's web, I can just load this JavaScript still in here if you have some JavaScript stuff that you still have lying around. So you don't have to use it for a lot of things, but if you want to use it, then you totally can. So again, this is all very powerful, and you can just choose whatever feels right to you for the right solution for the right thing. And I think then we have come up on time already, almost, and I still don't see any questions. So again, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the conference, and I'm looking forward to...
Just a moment, Gerald. There is a question. How to make my Win UI3 UWP app, a MAUI app quickly?
Oh, so okay, so maybe you have a Win UI3 app and you want to switch to MAUI. That's kind of like an interesting case. I guess
show you the question.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. So I guess like the depending on how big the application is, it might be easier to do a file new MAUI app and then start transitioning over the things to there. That's probably the quickest way. I don't think we have a transition path from like Win UI3 to .NET MAUI apps right now. So hopefully your app isn't too big yet, and you just do file new .NET MAUI application, and you start basically rebuilding it there. It should be pretty easy because you already have the Win UI app, the UWP app, which is all C# and .NET. So you should be able to copy and paste a lot of that stuff over, basically.
Okay, thank you. There are no more questions. So Gerald, I thank you very much. A nice shirt.
Thank you.
Shirt. Very nice. And have a nice day. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your session.
Thank you
very much.
All right, talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
See you.